Today we have with us the lovely Erin Diehl. There's so many things I want to talk to you about: improv, failure, improv in the context for talent development. So, we're going to just chat about a bunch of things, see where the conversation takes us. I know a lot of our listeners have a theater background, an acting background. So, maybe not specifically improv, but they practice a little bit of these techniques. Then we have some personalities who are they're not a theater person. They're like, enough of this kumbaya. I do not want to get in a room and practice acting as a team building exercise. I want to help set the scene that there's something for everyone, that folks can cultivate skills from adopting this improv comedian or actor's mindset, regardless of the role that you have.
The best improvisers that I've ever witnessed on stage are some of the most analytical thinkers in the world, because improv is not about getting on stage and being the class clown, which I, by the way, was in high school, and I failed miserably at improv in the beginning because I was trying to go for the joke. It's actually the opposite. The best improviser is listening and then reacting and responding in the moment to the last thing that was said. So they call it the truth in comedy. That's where the comedy lies, when you are organically having conversations that pick up what the last person said, add to it, which is yes and at its finest, and continues a conversation. We are doing this all day in our jobs. You and I are doing it literally right now. We are improvising. Like, we are all improvisers, but when we label it as such, that's when people get the sweaty armpits and they start to feel uncomfortable in their own skin. What we do is not to ever make anybody feel uncomfortable. It's actually to get comfortable with the uncomfortable and to pull out their highest self through play. And you'll find that when you start doing an improv activity, it feels awkward, but once you start doing it with the entire room, it feels so communal. It's so beautiful to facilitate and beautiful to witness, because no group is ever the same. And people find such joy. It really does bring out the best in people. And then you can have really authentic conversations through play.
How can trainers use improv techniques if they're focused on fostering more inclusive or engaging learning environments specifically?
Improv is all about inclusivity. You can't do an improv activity and be exclusive. You have to involve everyone in the room. We always say everything that we do is going to be some type of team building or collaborative experience, but we have a skill that we're training you on top of that. Yes, and is this mindset that's come up before. So let me just explain it in greater detail for anybody listening who doesn't know what yes, and is. Yes, and is this idea on stage. Let's say you and I are in an improv scene, Alexandria, and I come to you. It's just you and I. And or how about this? You come to me and I'll show you what yes and done the wrong way looks like. So just come to me and tell me that you have a problem. Tell me a problem that you have just going on in your life.
My microphone just blew up, and I think we're going to have to stop talking right now.
I think we should stop. That's a no. So I didn't say the words no, but we have nowhere to go. This conversation would end. Literally, there would be no podcast. However, if you said that same thing to me and I yes anded it without using the words yes and, it would look like this. Can you say it again?
My microphone just blew up. I don't know what to do. I think we should stop having this conversation.
I hear you. You know what's so funny? I had that same microphone and I had the same problem, but if you just press that button on the back a couple of times and the light flickers, it'll turn back on.
Okay.
And then, and yeah, and then we just go from there, right? So I didn't necessarily say the words yes and, but I said, oh, I hear you. And that's what yes and is. It's a yes, I hear you. Thank you for contributing. And I'm going to add something. So in a great improv scene, you would bring a line of dialogue. I would bring a line, and I would bring a line. You would bring a line, and we'd build this beautiful house of bricks of our ideas. And it's our own house that we built together. Just not my house, not Alexandria's house. It's our house we built together. So when you use that same concept in a work environment, you make everyone feel seen, heard, and valued by saying thank you for contributing your ideas. You don't negate it. You don't say no on the upfront. You thank them for asking or bringing it to your attention, and then you add something to it. You're postponing judgment of them, which makes them want to share more ideas. So the idea is with yes and, the more times that you allow people to feel seen, heard, and valued, people want to show up. When people want to show up, productivity rises. When productivity rises, we all thrive, right? The organization and the human. So that's one way that we really use improv to help foster these collaborative and inclusive environments. This is in work settings, this is in personal settings, this is in all the settings. When you allow somebody to feel heard and seen, they are more willing to show up, and they are more willing to show up, and you're going to come to a conclusion together on whatever that conclusion is, versus one person who is potentially the leader running the show.
I can see someone feeling like, you know what, I'm already drowning. I don't have time to
Yeah.
be like giving people space for all these failure ideas and saying, yay, this is fun that we're doing it together. Like, you're wasting my time. I'm trying to like be this person, the devil's advocate, like the negative Nancy
Yes.
listening and having trouble with all this.
Yes, and is like the go-to, right? Like that's your day to day. Do that as often as possible. But when poop hits the fan and you need to step in and lead because that is the only option and it is critical that you are the leader, sometimes you have to jump in and just say, hey, normally we're going to yes and each other and we're going to collaborate to come up with ideas. In this emergency scenario, we're going to try what I'm saying. So I do think in critical situations, yes and can go out the window. And then as you figure it out and build the plane while you're flying it, so to speak, you can yes and through collaboration to problem solve. Yes and does not mean you have to agree with anyone. Yes and means you say yes to yourself first before you give to somebody else.
You have a lot of philosophies on navigating failure. That always resonates with me so deeply. I just think it's a beautiful mindset to be able to overcome failure. How do we deal with it? How do we start this conversation?
Yes. A lot of organizations say that they value failure and they're run by a bunch of perfectionists. And I developed a method called Move On. And that's what I teach in my keynotes. That's what I teach when I talk to people about failure. And I'm going to share it here because I think it's so important. So, Move On is an acronym. The M stands for marinate. You cannot just say, oh, I failed, and then move on. You have to sit with it. You need time to process what that failure is. A rule of thumb is like, how long did the failure take place? Give yourself at least that time and then move on from there, but marinate with it. The O in Move On is own it. Okay. And by own it, it's not Susan and accounting's fault that that thing happened. Take part of your part in it. And then here's like the biggest part of owning it. You have to forgive yourself. You can't move on and carry the weight of that. The V is verify the lessons learned. There's something in that failure that is here to teach you a lesson. What are those 2 to 3 things? Then the E is evaluate your next steps. So what are the 2 to 3 action items that you're going to take from that learning experience? How are you going to put that learning into action? Then the O of Move On is the you have to process yet again what you've learned in the move setting before you can move on, because the N is your next failure. There's going to be another one. It's part of life.
We're starting this new year right now, and maybe that's just a nice way to wrap up the failure conversation, because a lot of folks can be hard on themselves with these intentions that they have for the new year, resolutions, and then they fall into old patterns or have trouble with these new lofty goals, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we have been really focusing on setting intentions this year. For me, it's all about how do you want to feel as a person, as a human being doing the work that you're doing at your role? How do you want to feel? Start there and work backwards. Think about if you could feel this way every single day, what would that do for you? What would that do for your team? What would that do for your family? When you say the word of how you want to feel, it brings a vibe to your body. And when you feel good, you attract things into your life. You are giving to yourself, giving to those around you in a way that is magnetic. And you start to attract versus push and pull. Things feel easier. So I think starting with how you want to feel and working backwards from there, if you want to set a one-word intention for the year, do that and keep that top of mind as you decide whether or not you want to do something. If you decide, I don't want to be a people pleaser in this situation, does it go along with my intention? No, don't do it. Or if it does feel good and it is aligned with how you want to feel this year, do it.
Well, hopefully our listeners got some great ideas and are going to go out there and have an amazing day.